Now, as we've just seen, the voters have decided who they want to represent their party in November. Now, the winners move on to the general election.
It is a midterm year, and there is a lot at stake for both Democrats and Republicans. Political strategist Javier Lacayo joins us now with his reaction to the results. Good morning, Javier.
Hey, good morning, Chris and Mary.
Great to see you. We wanted to ask you, why did Maloney lose with such a large margin?
Yeah, so obviously this was a new district that included portions of both Maloney's old district and Nadler's old district. But I think Nadler had a couple of key advantages going into the race yesterday. You know, one, I think major portions, more intact portions of his district were included in the new 12th district. Second, he had a ton of establishment support from major figures in the party like Senator Schumer, but also critically received the New York Times endorsement, which proved critical in a low turnout primary like we just had. And third, I think you had the factor of Suraj Patel, who was the third major candidate that was running in this district. He had historically challenged Maloney over the last few cycles, coming within a few points of her. And so I think he had established more of a base within her portion of the district that, ended up, taking a sizable chunk of votes away from her in this matchup.
So how big a factor was turnout? I know some pundits predicted that many voters on vacation, out of the Hamptons, whatnot, that just weren't able to come back to vote in this race.
Yeah, well, it's really unusual for us to have an August primary, Chris. I believe this is the first time that New York has ever had an August primary. And not just that, but, voters were really only going to the ballot for the congressional races and some of the key state Senate races. As many voters will remember, we had another primary back in June to vote for governor and several state races. So all of these things, I think, just contributed to lower turnout. And as is always the case in these races, it was really just a game of who could turn out their voters, when it really mattered.
Javier, what's your reaction to the results of the highly contested 10th district race? Congressman Mondaire Jones move into the district and join that crowded field of candidates.
Yeah, the 10th district, I think, was probably one of the most closely watched last night. And it's interesting because over the last few weeks, certainly Dan Goldman became the front runner with the New York Times endorsement, certainly with the millions of dollars that he himself personally poured into his campaign. And I think what we saw was the progressive wing, the left wing of the party, sort of failed to consolidate around a single candidate. You had Mondaire Jones, you had Yulin New, who was running with the Working Family Party's endorsement. You also had City Councilwoman Carlina Rivera, who had picked up a lot of support from progressive lawmakers and major unions. So that sort of failure to consolidate around a single candidate, led to Dan Goldman winning this seat with what looks like right now only about 25% of the vote.
Nadler and, all right, you probably couldn't hear the beginning of that question. Let's talk about clout with the New York delegation now, with both Nadler and Maloney, both powerful committee chairs, with Maloney now out. What does this speak to as far as what's next for her? And as I mentioned, the clout that New York had with both of them in the House.
Yeah, well, obviously the loss of Congresswoman Maloney, is a blow to the delegation. But, I think it is without a doubt that New York still has a lot of power and a lot of clout in Washington. We have the Senate Majority Leader in Chuck Schumer. We still have major players like Congressman Nadler in key committee assignments. Sean Patrick Maloney, who successfully fended off a challenge, from the left flank, is also, running the DCCC right now. So I think New York will continue to have a lot of clout in Congress, and really where the focus for New York Democrats needs to be in making sure that they maintain control of the chamber in a year that's going to be very competitive with Republicans.
And let's talk about the state Senate for a moment. A big win for progressives here. Will that be a huge blow to Mayor Adams in his fight to change bail reform?
Yeah, no, this is a major win for the DSA in the state Senate. As many folks know, Elizabeth Crowley had been endorsed by the mayor, by the city council speaker. But I still think that regardless of, what happened last night, the mayor is going to have a lot of trouble pushing through the reforms that he wants to see seen in the state Senate. The reality is that the political willpower to further reform the bail laws really isn't there. There's a lack of evidence by a lot of lawmakers that they say that there's really no tie between the bail laws and the rise in crime. And I think there's certainly a lot to say with the fact that crime has been rising everywhere around the country and just has happened to sort of coincide with some of these bail reform laws. So I think that the mayor is still going to have some trouble making his case in the state Senate, regardless of how this race had turned out.
All right, Javier, thanks so much. Javier Lacayo, our political strategist. Always good to talk with you. Going to be an interesting fall, to say the least. And we'll be talking with you throughout. Thanks so much. Bye, Javier.